Jimmy Kimmel tossed the phrase into the studio like a joke wrapped in silk. There was a brief silence. The audience looked around, unsure whether to laugh or gasp. Then obediently, applause erupted. The camera turned to Meghan Markle. Her smile faltered for a split second. She tilted her head, but the muscles beneath her jaw had tightened. In the world of late-night TV, the line between clever satire and cutting mockery is razor thin. That night, Jimmy was dancing dangerously close to it. "Welcome to the show, our very own American princess," he said, grinning. "Here to give us the inside scoop on palace life?" Meghan laughed gently, but those attuned could hear the tremble. She was tense. The crowd wanted to stay light-hearted, but something had shifted beneath the laughter. "Jimmy," Meghan replied, keeping her voice steady, "I'm here to talk about my new projects, the palace stories. They're kind of old news, don't you think?" But Jimmy wasn't ready to let go, not when the punchlines were this tempting. It was clear this interview wasn't going to be soft. "Old news? Like you?" Jimmy smirked. The laugh track queued up, but Meghan didn't laugh. She looked away, adjusted her mic. Her fingers gripped the armrest a little tighter. That night, the audience wasn't watching a duchess. They were watching a woman, alone on stage under the spotlight, shielded only by her composure. "Backstage," producers murmured. The director's voice crackled through Jimmy's earpiece. "Ease up!" But Jimmy had already fired his next shot. "So, which crown fits you best, Hollywood's or Buckingham's?" That question dropped like a stone. Meghan's smile vanished entirely. Her shoulders fell ever so slightly. This wasn't a talk show anymore. This was a confrontation in real time. The air in the studio had shifted. Laughter still echoed, but there was an unease beneath it. Like everyone was laughing just a second too late. Meghan's gaze had drifted. She seemed present, yet somewhere far away. Jimmy, still in his host persona, pressed on, but something was unraveling. "So, Meghan," he grinned, "the real question is, what does the Queen eat for breakfast?" A few more chuckles fluttered through the audience, but Meghan narrowed her eyes. "Jimmy," she said quietly, her voice both fragile and firm, "I didn't come here to be mocked." Jimmy's expression flickered. That wasn't in the script. The production team noticed. In the control room, the director rubbed his forehead anxiously. But Jimmy didn't pause. "We're just having fun, Meghan. Life needs a little humor, doesn't it?" Meghan gave a short, bitter laugh, a laugh with cracks in it. Then she looked him dead in the eyes and, for the first time, took full control of the room. "You've made people laugh for years, Jimmy, but there's a difference between laughing with someone and laughing at them. Do you know that difference?" Silence. Even the cameraman lowered his lens slightly. Meghan crossed her legs, sat straighter. There were no tears, but her eyes burned with unspoken rage. "I am not a punchline. I'm a woman. Until you realize that what I've lived through isn't your comedy skit, none of you will truly hear my story." Jimmy opened his mouth, but found no words. One clap rang out from the back row, then another. Then the studio erupted into applause. Not for Meghan, but for the truth in her words. For the first time, Jimmy Kimmel truly fell silent. As the show cut to commercial, the bright studio lights dimmed slightly. Meghan remained seated, unmoving. A production assistant approached quietly. "Are you all right?" they whispered. "I'm okay," Meghan replied, her voice faintly trembling. She slowly stood and walked toward the backstage hallway without another word. Jimmy stayed seated, staring at the cue cards in his hand. His face was tight with tension, his palms damp. This wasn't what he was used to. He was used to applause between jokes, a crowd eager to laugh. But today, someone had pierced through his stage armor. Behind the curtains, Meghan requested a moment alone. She closed the dressing room door gently, then stared at her reflection. Her makeup was intact, but inside, a storm brewed. "Why did I agree to this?" she whispered, but then a long breath. "Because some things need to be said." Meanwhile, Jimmy was having the same thought. Only a few minutes left until they were back on air. He skimmed the cards again, but no line felt right. For the first time, he felt the need to ditch the script. For the first time, he wanted to actually speak. The studio lights blazed on again. Audience members returned to their seats. Cameras rolled. Meghan walked back with poise, regaining her calm. Jimmy, however, looked more serious than ever. As the segment resumed, Jimmy put the cards aside. "Meghan," he said, voice unusually gentle, "there's something I really need to ask. Why did you come here?" Meghan paused. Then she nodded slightly. "Because I wanted to reclaim my voice." The studio held its breath. "For so long, others have spoken on my behalf," Meghan continued. "And the more I stayed silent, the more they forgot who I was. They thought I was just a headline, but I came here because I want to tell my own story now." Jimmy didn't look away. "Thank you for that." Two people from two sides of a screen made real contact for the first time. As the show continued, the atmosphere in the studio remained unfamiliar. The usual laughter, applause, flashy transitions had been replaced by a softer, more intentional energy. Jimmy had shed his sarcastic host persona and transformed into an actual listener. Meghan, on the other hand, was no longer performing. She was simply speaking from the heart. That segment of the program blew up on social media instantly. The word respect trended worldwide on Twitter during the broadcast. Everyone was talking about Jimmy's silence, Meghan's stance, and the resolve burning quietly in her eyes. Behind the scenes, the production crew buzzed with mixed reactions. Some sponsors were worried, while others saw the potential of record-breaking ratings. But in that moment, no one in the room cared about numbers. They were simply watching. Meghan thought back to the talk shows she watched as a child. Innocent laughter, surface-level questions, or predictable banter. But now something had cracked. A wall had come down. Jimmy took the mic again. "Some people say you're just seeking attention. What do you say to that?" Meghan smiled, though pain glimmered behind her eyes. "I didn't want attention. I just didn't want to disappear." The silence in the audience wasn't just respectful now. It was shaken. Jimmy paused. Then turning not to the camera but to Meghan, he spoke. "Sometimes we hide behind humor because telling the truth leaves us exposed. Today, that wall came down." Meghan nodded. "And sometimes that's all a woman needs. A single crack to feel human again." The connection between them was undeniable. As the show neared its end, the audience realized this wasn't a segment. This was a reckoning. Before closing, Jimmy faced the crowd and said, "What happened here today wasn't what we planned, but maybe it's exactly what we've needed." Meghan looked into the camera one last time, but this time her eyes didn't challenge. They invited. A quiet message passed through. "Tell your story too." There were just minutes left in the show. The studio glowed under the spotlight, but no one noticed the lights anymore. Meghan sat quietly, Jimmy too. All that remained was what radiated from within them, a shared understanding. The director's voice came through Jimmy's earpiece. "Jimmy, Shall we wrap? Jimmy looked at Meghan. It was a moment of choice. Everyone in the studio had their eyes on them, but the conversation had shifted. It was now between just the two of them. He inhaled deeply. Meghan, before we end this show, I have a confession. Meghan furrowed her brow slightly, but remained silent. When you walked in, I saw a character, a headline, a woman boiled down to sound bites. But today, I saw something else. Someone real, complex, hurt, but still standing. Tears welled in Meghan's eyes, but this time they weren't born of anger. They were release. Jimmy went on. Comedy was my armor. But you broke through it, and I owe you, and those who haven't been heard, a debt. The audience didn't clap. They didn't need to. This wasn't applause-worthy. It was soul-worthy. Meghan nodded, then gently she reached inside her jacket. She pulled out a small pin. It wasn't shiny or decorated. It was simple, yet profound. It bore no royal crest, just 4 words, "Silent women speak." She handed it to Jimmy. A refugee woman once gave this to me. She told me to give it to someone who would be a voice for the voiceless. Tonight, you were that voice. Jimmy took the pin, his eyes glassy. Still holding on to his host persona, he quipped, "Does this make me an honorary American princess?" A few chuckles rippled through the audience, but it wasn't deflection anymore. It was peace. The ending theme began to play. But instead of the usual jazzy beat, it was a soft piano tune, understated, reflective. Jimmy closed the show with a final line. Tonight, something real happened. Beyond the screen, beyond the script. Maybe not a talk show, but definitely a reckoning. Thank you. The camera slowly zoomed out. There was no applause, but the silence was louder than any ovation. That night, countless viewers realized some voices are quiet not because they have nothing to say, but because no one had ever listened. And Meghan showed the world she wasn't just a label or a role. She was a woman, a person, a story.